On this episode of On Tap, 12 years after brewing their first beer, we introduce you to a pair of former college roommates who are still living the dream.
And with homebrewing growing at record rates, we'll step inside a local homebrew store.
Plus, Northbound Smokehouse and Brewpub delivers award-winning beer and food. Welcome to another episode of On Tap. I'm Ben Hale, joined by Danica Peterson. Today we're here at Northbound Smokehouse and Brewpub in South Minneapolis, and we've got a beautiful arrangement of food and beer in front of us.
And it smells amazing. You can smell the smokehouse as soon as you walk in, and I am excited.
And you know what else? I've been taking little bites already.
Yeah?
It tastes amazing as well. So we've got something to look forward to today. But to start off today, I am drinking from right here at Northbound. I'm drinking their Big Jim IPA. It's real good.
And I have the Smokehouse Porter. It's made with some of their smokehouse materials here, and it is also quite tasty.
Awesome. Well, to start off today's show, we're going to head to Hopkins, where we're going to take a look at LTD Brewing. And 12 years ago, college roommates Blake and Jeremy started homebrewing, and little did they know that that would turn into a career. And 12 years later, they're doing it big over at LTD, where it's their goal. Every time you walk in, there's something new on tap and something new for you to try.
We got a bug when I was on a tour of Surly about a year into their operation. I thought to myself, geez, this seems pretty awesome. While it also seemed like a lot of work at the time, I was working pretty hard at the time myself, and figured I love beer. I'm not afraid to work hard on my own. Geez, this would be a dream come true. Fast forward about a couple months later to a buddy's wedding, and talked to Jeremy, pitched him my idea.
First thought was, this is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. There's so many breweries around already. I think there were 3 at the time maybe, that I thought no way could any more exist. You know, brewing's a fun hobby, but let's just leave it at that. About a week or 2 later, I was just laying in bed, thinking about my nice desk job that I had and how fun it was, and how I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And that's kind of when I thought, hey, maybe Blake is onto something here.
And then from there, it basically just, he got on board and started the planning process. And fast forward, 3.5, 4 years ago, we had a lease in Northeast Minneapolis.
We had a few places that didn't work out quite as well as they could have. So we originally were looking at Northeast. It was before it was really saturated. There were only a couple other breweries there. Long story short, it didn't work out for us, and we ended up here in Hopkins instead.
It was a community-based brewery. It was really what we wanted to bring and do, to allow us to constantly rotate our beers, to bring something different, to bring something to a community that didn't have it.
When we lost out on Northeast, I was pretty bummed out, pretty devastated. I thought that was, the hot spot to be, which a lot of breweries there now, so it's definitely a hot spot. But I'm very glad now that we ended up here instead of Northeast, because we are really the brewery for Hopkins.
With the location secured, Blake and Jeremy continued working their former day jobs while building out the brewery and taproom at night. With the goal of constantly rotating their beers, the purchase and installation of a unique brew system was an important next step.
We can do basically any style of beer on it.
So it's an 8-barrel system. We were lucky enough to acquire it when we did.
8 barrels is 250 gallons at a time.
We had been watching the used brewing system market for quite a few years before we ended up purchasing it.
It was actually originally designed in Canada as an extract kit, so people would pour syrup in and kind of, I don't want to say cheap, but make it a little bit easier so you don't have to crush your own grain, extract your own sugars out of your grain. It was purchased then by a brewery in Ohio, and they converted it to all grain for us. Unfortunately, they went out of business, so we bought it off them.
And then since then, we've just been adding. We've added our two double fermenters, so the BFF and the Dream Machine. Those were added after the fact. Those are 2 16-barrel fermenters. And then we just added the tri-stage bright tank.
So that's where you drop the temperature, you kind of clear out the beer, and then you also carbonate in that tank as well. So it's basically a 40% increase in our production capabilities with that new tank.
So we've got 3 8-barrel fermenters, 2 16-barrel fermenters, and then the 3 8-barrel bright tanks stacked into one, and then 13 4-barrel bright tanks / serving tanks in the cooler, amongst a ton of kegs. So each time we brew, it's about 2,000 pints like this. We go through one of those in about 2 weeks. So
with the small batches, we can rotate through our beers a lot quicker, so we get to make a lot more kinds of beer. We get to try crazy things. If they work out, phenomenal. If not, we'll try again next time. So the small batches are a lot more fun to produce, work a lot better for us, and the tap room is really what allows us to do that.
Being a brewery owner, you have to be prepared to wear a lot of different hats. But the best days are when you get to do what got you into this business.
every day that you get to brew is just that highlight day. You can totally tell with all of us that that's the highlight, because whenever we're brewing, it's just, we're in the best mood possible. It's just such a fun day because it gets back to why we started. It's the passion for brewing, the passion for beer. So definitely brewing is the highlight. So I brew what I'm most passionate about, which is IPAs, more malt forward beers, so browns, ambers, things that are also a little bit on the crazy side, sours, barley wines, you name it, kind of weird, crazy, big, or more bitter forward.
I'm definitely the dark beer guy. I like stouts, I like porters. The deeper, the darker, the stronger, the better for me.
Usually when a beer is really tough to execute or takes a long time to get just right, you tend to like it just a little bit more. So our triple IPA, it's called Sleepwalker, something that I look forward to. We've done it twice now, and we did double the amount this year, and it was gone in about 3/4 of the time from last year. So that one's definitely one that I always look forward to making and also enjoying myself. But, you know, as much as I hate to admit it, Jeremy's Russian Imperial Stout, aged in most notably the bourbon barrel for last year's 1-year anniversary, was incredible.
And what's on tap next might be up to you.
We're always looking for new stuff, and we're always looking for suggestions. Part of the thing that we do is Jeremy and myself and our assistant brewers are taproom managers, so we're always getting feedback from people, and that's part of why we do that, not just to be able to talk to the beer to anyone who wants to talk more in depth about it, but also be able to get feedback on what are people looking for. A lot of our best beers that are most innovative have come that route, is just getting feedback from people in the tap room saying, you know, I've never had this, but it sounds great. And then us doing a spot check and saying, does that sound great? Yeah, it kind of does. Let's do it.
The everyday crowd in the tap room is different than what Blake and Jeremy expected when they opened, but they love how it is becoming a community gathering spot.
Before we opened the brewery, we kind of had an idea of who it would be. More young professional type is what we were thinking, more homebrewer type. It's kind of amazing. It's everyone. And I don't know if that's just because of where we're located, because of what we do, but come in here on any given day and you'll see everyone from every walk of life imaginable.
We try and hit every age group, people who love craft beer, people who are new to craft beer, and then we also do root beer, so we have kind of our non-beer drinker crowd that comes in a lot as well.
And we encourage it to be a community brewery and a community atmosphere where you can not only bring in kids, but where you can, you know, bring in your family.
If you want to have just a good time, we do trivia every Wednesday. We do live music Fridays. We try and have special events all the time. We've done painting in here, paints and pints. We try and mix it up so that everybody can come in at some point and experience the brewery and see what we're all about. You know, maybe try something new and just have a good time. That's really what it's all about.
Going forward, Blake and Jeremy are eager to see what the future holds for LTD.
When you plan a business, you know, you put together your, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan, and We were kind of at our 5-year plan about 6 months ago, so we're starting to try and figure out, okay, I know that I wanted to do a lot more in distribution.
We want to make sure the demand is there before we move on to the next level.
You know, the thing for us is we're trying to grow as quickly as we can, but still doing it organically.
With a bright future ahead, Blake and Jeremy remain committed to the mission embedded into their name.
Multiple meanings behind the name. The most literal meaning, LTD, abbreviation for limited. We do limited batches. We constantly rotate our taps, our beers, so we're always doing things in limited quantities.
We like to say limited batches, unlimited possibilities. That's what we do around here. We like to just try new things. Like I said, if it works out great, we'll do it again. If not, you know, push it to the wayside and move on with life.
The secondary meaning, which is just kind of we just kind of keep it to us, and it's what had originally spurred the idea of starting a brewery, which was, what is the experience that you have when you're sitting down, having a great beer, talking with your family, your friends, and enjoying the moment. It's live the dream.
Well, we definitely enjoyed our time at LTD Brewing Company. They've got a lot of different things. They've got approachable beers. They've got an approachable space. It was just, we had a good time, and I'm looking forward to making a return visit for sure.
All right. Well, here at Northbound, we do have a lot of food in front of us, as Ben said earlier, so we're going to tell you about it. Here we have their open-faced turkey sandwich, and it's served on a waffle, but get this, the waffle's made out of stuffing.
What?
And then we have some cheese curds. They actually smoke the cheese in the same smoker that they smoke all the meat, and they are tasty.
And we've got a flatbread here with caramelized onions and brie on it. Oh, that looks delicious as well. And then we have their porchetta sandwich here, which I love porchetta, and I had a little bite of it already, and it's delicious. We should also say we've got this other beer here in the middle here. This is their special. It's already gone by the time you're watching the show, guaranteed, because they brew it once a year and it lasts about a week. But it's their Polar Vortex Eisbach, and it's a 16%, and I'm gonna take the first.
It's a sweet malty beer.
Yeah, for sure.
They say they brew once a year and it lasts about a week here in the tap room.
Ooh, that's real nice. All right.
Well, nearly all brewers, including the guys from LTD Brewing, started as home brewers. The homebrewing industry has exploded in the last decade, and homebrew supply stores in America are now busier than ever. So with that in mind, we visited homebrew supply store Brew and Grow to learn more about the hobby and how people get started.
At Brew and Grow in Spring Lake Park, they like to keep it as simple as possible for beginners.
We always tell people, if you can make mac and cheese, you can make beer.
Kevin became interested in good beers and home brewing after a friend of his gave him a homebrew about 30 years ago.
A friend of mine, we're fishing, and he had some homebrew, and up to that point I'd been drinking like old style, back in the 80s or whatever. But and it was, to me, it was like an epiphany. I drank crappy beer all my life, and then he had a homebrew and gave me one, and I said, "You made this?"
But back in the 80s, there were some problems.
It was hard to find stuff though back then. Yeah. And online, there wasn't much going on online, and there wasn't an online, so.
And beyond that, knowledge of beer styles outside of Pilsner or light American-style lagers was pretty limited.
You had your, Heinekens and Hacker Shores and, your real notorious imports, but there really wasn't, here there wasn't, really anything. So it was mostly word of mouth. People, like I said, somebody would give somebody a beer and they would say, "Oh, that's really good." So it was really word of mouth back then.
After brewing more and more, Kevin thought that they could add a small homebrewing section to the gardening store they were already running.
Initially, we were in Madison, Wisconsin, and we were just the grow side, and then we decided to move up to Minnesota here, and at that time, that's when I got introduced to it, and I noticed that there wasn't really places to buy it, so we did some investigating and found some distributors that would sell to us, and yeah, we've been doing it since 1988, and probably the first 10 years, it was a niche hobby, but I would say about 10 or 15 years ago, it just skyrocketed. And I think a lot of that has to do with the web. just because people have the information available. And like I said, back in the day, it was word of mouth, and that's a slow process.
Getting unique beers has now become a breeze. With dozens of tap rooms in the area selling fresh growlers, you don't need to brew your own to get something fun and different.
It's kind of a double-edged sword for us. It helps initiate or get people introduced to it, but on the other hand, it's a lot easier to go buy good beer now, with the tap rooms and just availability. Any liquor store now has usually at least one full shelf of imports or craft beers.
But even with more than 4,000 breweries nationwide, people still homebrew and are homebrewing in record numbers. There are more than 1.2 million homebrewers across the U.S. Some join homebrewing clubs and enter homebrew competitions. Some even go on to become a full-time brewer at a brewery. But most homebrewers, including Kevin, simply brew as a fun hobby in their free time.
Unfortunately, I don't brew as much as I used to because, like I said before, there's so many good beers around. I mean, I like to experiment around, but I'd say probably once a month.
Brew and Grow sees customers who brew as often as once a week, and some who brew just a couple times a year. No matter how often someone brews, Kevin and his crew are on hand to answer questions and help people find what they need.
It's a full-service shop. If you come in, you can get either a starter kit and then pick out a batch of beer. Otherwise, if you get into, like, say, the all grain, our grain room has virtually every kind of grain you could come up with to make any kind of beer.
Their grain room is the largest in the Midwest and offers about 60 different kinds of grains from several different countries. Looking at this can seem overwhelming, so Kevin directs first-timers to brewing kits, where each of the ingredients is already measured for you.
You're making a 5-gallon batch, which will get you 2 cases. Typically, it's an investment of, like I say, $30 to $50 for 2 cases.
The brewing process itself takes a couple of hours, and then you are left with a couple of weeks of waiting before you get to enjoy your brew.
You can plan on probably 2 hours on the stove, then it takes about 2 weeks to ferment, and then it takes about 2 weeks to carbonate. So if a person was to come in and buy a batch today, make it up today, it'd be about a month before that beer is ready.
They get a lot of questions at the store from new brewers. A common question they get is, what beer should I brew first? Their answer is, whatever style you like the best.
Usually what happens is people are pretty doubtful, they're like, oh, can I do this? They're a little hesitant. And then once they make it, as long as they go through all the process, right, you're gonna end up with good beer.
While the ingredients will be a little different, whether a first-time brewer picks up an IPA, a stout, a Hefeweizen, or a Kolsch, most of the processes are exactly the same.
I think it's a lot easier than people think it is. I mean, like I say, there's on a daily basis, we get people in here, and you can kind of tell they're real skittish, and they'll ask all the questions, but a lot of times they don't ask them in chronological order. They're worried about this or that or the other thing, and it is a process. And once you get that process down, pretty much any beer is going to require that same cooking process, fermentation process, bottling process.
And remember, if you can make mac and cheese, you can make beer.
And like many of you, I've also dabbled in homebrewing. I've done a little on and off for the last 10 years, and I know that it kind of piqued your interest as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've never done home brewing, but being at the store there, I was like, I can do this, and I think I might have caught the bug.
All right.
Well, not only does Northbound have delicious food and delicious beer, they also have a very unique story to tell.
We had a bunch of investors in the neighborhood that kind of helped us open up, get the capital to open it and get us running over that first, 10 months to a year. And, it was kind of a community thing that actually kept us going and getting through all the hurdles. I think the neighborhood really was craving something unique like this. And, our dream of the food and the beer and the service just matched what the neighborhood was looking for. We made sure that we had 2 industrial-sized smokers to pretty much smoke the entire menu. I was lucky enough to spend a few years working at Town Hall Brewery, and what I found, I paid attention to the customers and what the customers liked. You'd run into some duds that the customers wouldn't really be attracted to, and I kind of paid attention to that. What customers really want is a new twist on American styles, which are really derived from English styles. So you're looking at English or American takes on English styles that are kind of bumped up a little bit and more bolder flavors and the hops and the aroma, even the malt character. If they're here the first time, they got to try the porter. The porter is kind of my baby. There are a lot of moving parts to the beer that make it very complex. It's called the Smokehouse Porter because it's got a tiny percentage, like 5% of the malt bill is smoked. It's smoked in-house, and it's kind of almost a proprietary smoke, a flavor that you really can't get in other beers just by buying smoked malt on the market. That and try that with the porchetta, because the porchetta is kind of the Bryce's baby. We call it the 18-hour porchetta because it's actually in the smoker for 18 hours. Start it in the morning and it goes all the way overnight. It's an item that he was really passionate about when he was growing up in the Iron Range, and he brought with him. So the porchetta and the porter, those would be the two things I would say that are must-haves here. Here we concentrate on service. We concentrate on the food. There are no food trucks. You always know what you're going to get here. Consistency. Everybody talks about the consistency in beer, the food, and we're always changing the menu so you don't get bored here. Something that sets Northbound apart from many of the breweries that are opening up now is that we take care of each tiny little step of the brewing process and make sure that there's excellence in every single part of it. And when you taste the beer, you can taste the award-winning beer at the end of the process. We do want to open up a second neighborhood place, and it would be almost a carbon copy of this place, but only in another neighborhood.
Well, thanks again to Northbound Smokehouse and Brewpub for hosting us today, and that is their story. And thanks as well to Brew and Grow and LTD Brewing Company for showing us around their places too.
I don't know about you, Danica, but I am ready to dig into some of this
Smells
food.
amazing.
So I think we should say goodbye.
Yeah.
And so remember, drink good beer and drink it responsibly. This episode of On Tap is brought to you in part by LTD Brewing Company in Hopkins, where limited batches means unlimited possibilities. And by Northbound Smokehouse and Brewpub, featuring a scratch kitchen with 2 industrial smokers and adventurous top-notch beers.